Well, Elizabeth, would you like to read the last one as well?
Yes. This
Great,
is
thank
Bibi.
you.
This
No,
is Bibi.
Elizabeth.
Okay, okay.
Thank you. Is anyone present? We're looking for someone to do the healing prayer. Does anyone know it as it's been done? That melody?
Well,
If not, you could just read it.
This is Emma speaking.
Yes?
I know a version of it that was done in California for a long time, and I only sang it at the Baha'i Center once. And so
Would you like to do it today?
I would not mind. I'll try to do that today.
Thank you.
It's always nice to hear different versions.
Yes.
Hermione, before we begin, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. That's good.
Yeah, before you were muted, so
Oh,
you probably thought we didn't hear you.
okay.
I saw you indicate yes, yes, yes.
Okay.
Well, we're going to be getting started. It's 11:07. I think we're all set, actually. Well, welcome, dear friends. We're going to go ahead and get started to the Baha'i Unity Center's South DeKalb County, Georgia, Sunday devotional program. Welcome, everyone. Allahu Akbar, God is most glorious. It's wonderful to have all of you with us today. You know, around the world, the teachings of the Baha'i faith brought to us more than 150 years ago by His Holiness Baha'u'llah, the founder, and whose name in Arabic means the glory of God. His teachings have inspired and continue to inspire individuals and communities as they strive to improve their own lives and contribute to the advancement of civilization. Baha'i beliefs address such essential themes as the oneness of God and His religion, the oneness of humanity, freedom from all forms of prejudice, the inherent nobility of the human being, the progressive revelation of religious truth, a gradual unfolding of God's purpose with the appearance of each divine teacher, the development of spiritual qualities which allows us to reflect the image of God, the image that God made us in, the integration of worship and service with work performed in the spirit of service actually being accounted as worship in the eyes of God, the fundamental equality of the sexes, more widely evidenced in a setting of equal opportunity, the harmony between religion and science as an established fact, the centrality of justice in all human endeavor, the importance of education, particularly for children, and the dynamics of the relationships that strive to bind together individuals, communities, and institutions as humanity advances towards its collective maturity. Friends, we have once again an amazing program as we do every week. We're pleased to have you join us. So welcome once again. We'll begin with the opening devotions, followed by music from Emma Salahuddin. Our first reader, Elizabeth Bowers. Elizabeth?
Could you move? I need to see the words.
Are they down too low or up too high? Or
it needs to be over to the left. It's the end is cut off.
You know, on your screen, you can, you should be able to remove the,
oh, this picture here. Let's
yeah,
see.
all
How
of
do I do
those.
that? Now, okay, if you could put the words back up, I would be able to see them.
Can you see them now?
I can. for the most part, but I need the screen to be out of my way. Let's see if I can. Oh, there, I got it. Send down thy blessings, O my God, upon the tree of the Bayan, upon its root and its branch, its boughs, its leaves, its fruits, and upon whatsoever beareth or sheltereth. Cause this tree then to be made into a magnificent scroll, to be offered to the presence of him whom thou wilt make manifest on the day of judgment, that he may graciously allow the entire company of the followers of the Bayan to be restored to life, and that he may, through his bounty, inaugurate a new creation. Indeed, all are but paupers in the face of thy tender mercy, and lowly servants before the tokens of thy loving kindness. I beg of thee, by thy bounty, O my God, and by the outpourings of thy mercy and bestowals, O my Lord, and by the evidences of thy heavenly favors and grace, O my best beloved, to watch over him whom God shall make manifest, that no trace of despondency may ever touch him. The Bob.
Thank you, Elizabeth.
Mhm.
Bill?
My God, whom I worship and adore, I bear witness unto thy unity and thy oneness, and acknowledge thy gifts both in the past and in the present. Thou art the all-bountiful, the overflowing showers of whose mercy have rained down upon high and low alike, and the splendors of whose grace have been shed over both the obedient and the rebellious. O God of mercy, before whose door the quintessence of mercy hath bowed down, and round the sanctuary of whose cause loving kindness in its inmost spirit hath circled, we beseech thee, entreating thine ancient grace, and seeking thy present favor, that thou mayest have mercy upon all who are the manifestations of the world of being, and deny them not the outpourings of thy grace in thy days. All are but poor and needy, and thou verily art the all-possessing, the all-subduing, the all-powerful.
Thank you, Bill. Joan? Sorry.
Lauded be thy name, O thou who beholdest all things and art hidden from all things. From every land thou hearest the lamentations of them that love thee. And from every direction thou hearkenest the cries of such as have recognized thy sovereignty. Were their oppressors to be asked, wherefore have thou oppressed them and held them in bondage in Baghdad and elsewhere? What injustice have they committed? To whom have they betrayed? Whose blood have they spilled? And whose property have they plundered? They know not of what to answer. Thou knowest full well, O my God, that their only crime was to have loved thee. For this reason have their oppressors laid hold on them and scattered them abroad. Whereas I am, O my God, thou wilt send down upon thy servants only what is good for them. I nevertheless beseech thee, by thy name, which overshadoweth all things, to raise up for their assistance and as a sign of thy grace and evidences of thy power, those who will keep them safe from all their adversaries. Potent art thou to do thy pleasure. Thou art verily the supreme ruler, the almighty, the help in peril, the self-subsisting. Baha'u'llah.
Thank you, Joan. Matthew?
O God, educate these children. These children are the plants of thine orchard, the flowers of thy meadow, the roses of thy garden. Let thy rain fall upon them. Let the sun of reality shine upon them with thy love. Let thy breeze refresh them, in order that they may be trained, grow, and develop, and appear in the utmost beauty. Thou art the giver, thou art the compassionate. Abdul Baha.
Thank you, Matthew. Sally? Sally, are you there?
There. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry. Oh my God, verily I invoke thee and supplicate before thy threshold, asking that all thy mercies may descend upon these souls, specialize them for thy favor and thy truth. O Lord, unite and bind together the hearts, join in accord all the souls, and exhilarate the spirits through the signs of thy sanctity and oneness. O Lord, make these faces radiant through the light of thy oneness. Strengthen the loins of thy servants in the service of thy kingdom. O Lord, thou possessor of infinite mercy, O Lord of forgiveness and pardon, forgive our sins, pardon our shortcomings, and cause us to turn to the kingdom of thy clemency, invoking the kingdom of might and power, humble at thy shrine and submissive before the glory of thine evidences. O Lord God, make us as the waves of the sea, as flowers of the garden, united, agreed through the bounties of thy love. O Lord, dilate the breasts through the signs of thy oneness, and make all mankind as stars shining from the same height of glory, as perfect fruits growing upon thy tree of life. Verily, thou art the Almighty, the self-subsistent, the giver, the forgiving, the pardoner, the omniscient, the one creator. Abdul Baha.
Thank you, Sally. Barbara Taylor?
All men have proceeded from God, and unto him shall all return. All shall appear before him for judgment. He is the Lord of the day of resurrection, of regeneration, and of reckoning, and his revealed word is the balance. True death is realized when a person dieth to himself at the time of his revelation, in such wise that he seeketh not except him. True resurrection from the sepulchres means to be quickened in conformity with his will through the power of his utterance. Paradise is attainment of his good pleasure, and everlasting hellfire his judgment through justice. The day he revealeth himself is resurrection day, which shall last as long as he ordaineth. Everything belongeth unto him, and is fashioned by him. All besides him are his creatures. The Ba.
Thank you, Barbara. Khalil?
O my brother, a pure heart is as a mirror. Cleanse it with the burnish of love and severance from all save God, that the true sun may shine therein and the eternal morning dawn. Then wilt thou clearly see the meaning of earth and heaven cannot contain me. What can alone contain me is the heart of him that believeth in me. And thou wilt take up thy life in thy hand, and with infinite longing cast it before thy newly found beloved.
Thank you, Khalil. Bibi?
It's a great question pertaining to humanity is religion. The first condition is that man must intelligently investigate its foundations. The second condition is that he must admit and acknowledge the oneness of the world of humanity. By this means, the attainment of true fellowship among mankind is assured, and the alienation of races and individuals is prevented. All must be considered the servants of God. All must recognize God as the one kind protector and creator. Where am I? In proportion to the acknowledgement of the oneness and solidarity of mankind, fellowship is possible. Fellowship is possible, possible misunderstanding will be removed and reality become apparent. Then will the light of reality shine forth. And when reality illumines the world, the happiness of humankind will become a verity. Man must spiritually perceive that religion has been intended by God to be the means of grace, the source of life, and the cause of agreement. If it becomes the cause of discord, enmity, and hatred, it is better that man should be without it. For in its teachings, we seek the spirit of charity and love to bind the hearts of men together. If, on the contrary, we find it alienates and embitters human hearts, we must justify it in casting it aside. Therefore, when man through sincere investigation discovers the fundamental reality of religion, his former prejudices disappear, and in his new condition of enlightenment is conducive to the development of the world of humanity. Abdul Baha.
Thank you, Bibi. Elizabeth? Elizabeth, can you see the screen?
You're muted.
Are you there?
I'm here. I can't see the words.
It's okay. Thank you so much for agreeing to do it. Bill, would you be willing to read this? Bill Collins.
Sure. Let there be no misgivings as to the animating purpose of the worldwide law of Baha'u'llah. Far from aiming at the subversion of the existing foundations of society, it seeks to broaden its basis, to remold its institutions in a manner consonant with the needs of an ever-changing world. It can conflict with no legitimate allegiances, nor can it undermine essential loyalties. Its purpose is neither to stifle the flame of a sane and intelligent patriotism in men's hearts, nor to abolish the system of national autonomy so essential if the evils of excessive centralization are to be avoided. It does not ignore, nor does it attempt to suppress, the diversity of ethnical origins, of climate, of history, of language and tradition, of thought and habit, that differentiate the peoples and nations of the world. It calls for a wider loyalty, for a larger aspiration than any that has animated the human race. It insists upon the subordination of national impulses and interests to the imperative claims of a unified world. It repudiates excessive centralization on one hand and disclaims all attempts at uniformity on the other. Its watchword is unity in diversity.
Thank you, Bill. Thank you, Chris, for preparing those readings and the accompanying photos. And thank you to all of our readers for volunteering today. Thank you so much. Friends, it's now time for the healing prayer. And our guest musician today, Emma Salahuddin, is going to perform a different version of the healing prayer for us today. Please, Emma.
The name is my healing, oh my God, and remembrance of thee is my remedy. Nearness to thee is my hope, and love for thee my companion. Thy mercy to me is my healing and my support in both this world and the world to come. Verily art thou, the all bountiful, the all knowing, the all wise.
Thank you, Emma. And since we didn't allow the friends to call out the names of anyone they wish to remember through the healing prayer, we're going to ask for that now, and then we will have a brief recitation of the prayer. Josie Reynolds.
Sandra, Hassan,
Tyrone,
Romeo Pickens.
Zamani,
Thank you.
Cordia Smith,
John,
Margaret Varner,
Micah Venters,
Elon Bowers,
Ruth Kimber,
Walter Harper, Gregory Kolkowski,
Naomi Plansbury.
Mark Holcomb,
Thy name is my healing, O my God, and remembrance of thee is my remedy. Nearness to thee is my hope, and love for thee is my companion. To me is my healing and my succor in this world and the world to come. Thou verily art the all bountiful, the all knowing, the all wise. Uh-huh. Thank you, friends. At this time, we'd like to welcome again our guest musician, Emma Salahuddin, who's going to play music from her didgeridoo instrument. Please welcome Emma.
Good morning, friends. For all of those that may not be familiar with my instrument, the didgeridoo, it is a long, hollow reed type instrument. It originates down in the Northern Territory of Australia from Aboriginal people there. And it is absolutely what I described, a hollow reed. There is nothing in there. It's just a hole and a piece of wood, and they can be fashioned from all types of hardwoods, bamboo, and long gourds like this one that grow up in cactus plants out in the West, okay, far west of the US. The first one I'm going to play is in the key of B flat. It's a bass didgeridoo, and I'm going to do a meditative humming type song with a little lilting rhythm put into it, okay? So this is my first song. It is called Sounds of the Ancestors.
Friends, if you're able to switch to speaker view, you can see a much larger screen of Emma and the instruments. Beautiful. Wonderful. You have one more for us?
The second piece I have entitled Justice and Unity, because we need it now more than ever. And I think we're on our way there. We're going to be seeing it, maybe not in my lifetime, but we're going to see it. Justice and unity. Now the world's in a mess today. I want you all to hear what I say. But it's gonna be alright. Cause something's on the horizon. Oh, we need justice and unity. Yes, we do. Justice and unity, yes we do.
We need it, me and you. The effective key is justice and unity, huh? The effective key, it's justice and unity. Come on, sing with me. The effective key is justice and unity. The effective key is justice and unity. Justice and unity.
Thank you so much, Emma. That was outstanding. And we do need justice for sure. That was fantastic. Fantastic. Thank you. Okay, let's see. Okay. Well, friends, each week we're blessed to have a guest speaker join us and a presenter who comes and shares with us their insights on a particular topic. This week, we're honored to have Louis Venters, PhD, that would make him Dr. Venters, who teaches African diaspora, and U.S. history at Francis Marion University. Louis serves on the board of directors of Preservation South Carolina and represents his university on the South Carolina African American Heritage Commission. He has collaborated on a number of public history projects, including the multiple award-winning Green Books of SouthCarolina.com, and is the author of 2 books, No Jim Crow Church, The Origins of South Carolina's Baha'i Community, and A History of the Baha'i Faith in South Carolina. He blogs on issues related to race, religion, history, and culture at louisventers.com. We're pleased to have him share with us today. Friends, please welcome Louis Venters, who will speak on Baha'is and the unfinished business of reconstruction.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And I should say it's Louis. I prefer the French way.
Wonderful. I will remember that.
Oh, no problem. Thank you for that introduction, and I'm delighted to be here. First I want to say, Emma, you can sing and play anything, any version, anytime, anywhere that I am, just for future reference. Thank you so much. And I also really want to thank Barbara Hennix from the Baha'i Unity Center for the invitation to participate today. I have to admit that some of my most precious moments in service to the Baha'i faith have been spent with Barbara. And so when maybe y'all, if you know her, you have learned this lesson too. When Barbara asks you to do something, you just say, yes, when do you need me? So I'm really, really happy to be taking part. So I'm going to share my screen a little bit so that you can see some images, but I won't do that the whole time. If I play my cards right, I'll sort of go back and forth. But I do want to tell you that I'll be drawing in this presentation from a number of sources. Mostly it's research related to my most recent book, A History of the Baha'i Faith in South Carolina, which was published early last year. The global pandemic has cramped my style a little bit in getting around to talk about this book in person. So I'm also really grateful for this chance to speak virtually with folks from all over the place. But I just want to say at the outset, I am a professional historian. I'm a Baha'i believer. Um, and like all people of faith and like all Baha'is, I'm trying to figure out in my life how to integrate all aspects of knowledge and try and learn how to make the teachings of the Baha'i faith relevant in our contemporary society and in contemporary discourse. And I just appreciate the opportunity to talk together with you in this ongoing effort that really all of us share to try to make sense of who we are and what we're doing and hopefully where we're headed. So I'll try and keep my comments brief, and if we've got enough time at the end, we can have some discussion. So I do want to introduce the Baha'i faith again, because Hermione did that just fine. I just want to dwell on one central idea a little bit more. And that's this central principle of the unification of the human race, because it has a direct bearing on my topic. It has a direct bearing on how we understand the history of the United States, the nature of the present crisis or crises in which we find ourselves, and I think how we find and continually renew our sense of purpose in the world. So I should say that it's very understandable that the poisonous ideologies of the 20th century and the early 21st century, imperialism, communism, fascism, Christian fundamentalism, Islamic fundamentalism, these have made most people in my profession of history wary of holding to any particular grand narrative of history. But I do happen to believe, both based on religious conviction and I hope on reasonable evidence and thought and reflection, that humanity, our country included, is heading somewhere inexorably. And even though the moment that we find ourselves in right now appears to be very dark, the somewhere that we're all headed is ultimately really, really good. As deranged as our country seems to be, as much suffering as we see in every land, there is also ample reason to believe that the world's peoples in all their diversity can learn to live and work and find fulfillment as a single race in a single global homeland. This is a vision of human history and of human destiny that countless seers and poets have expressed, that has been an inspiration and a solace for the hearts of people of goodwill all down the centuries, that has been promised the world over in our sacred scriptures and our spiritual traditions. In this view, the unification of the human race is the next inevitable stage of the evolution of life on this planet. The great Catholic paleontologist and religious philosopher Pierre Théard de Chardin memorably described this next stage as the planetization of mankind. Baha'u'llah called it the age of ingathering. St. John called it the day of one fold and one shepherd. In the Quran, it's called the promised day, the great age when the earth will shine with the glory of its Lord. In the book of Isaiah, it's when the mountain of the Lord's house shall be established in the top of the mountains and shall be exalted above the hills, and all nations shall flow unto it. And when God will demand to know, what mean ye that ye beat my people to pieces and grind the faces of the poor? This is an age utterly beyond anything humanity has yet experienced or the mind conceived or language adequately encompassed. here's the voice of God again in the Quran. Even as we produced the first creation, so shall we produce a new one. A promise we have undertaken, truly shall we fulfill it. This is the moment that's been in preparation for 4.5 billion years on our little planet. And each of us gets to decide how we respond, how we understand what's happening to us, what part we choose to play in this coming stage of the history of this little blue dot. This tiny planet with a thin film of life right on the edges is headed somewhere. I recall, can everybody see the screen? The blue marble is the name of that photograph?
Yes.
Yes, you can see.
Yes.
Right. As we think about the part that we want to play in this next stage in our evolution, I recall the work of the great British historian Arnold Toynbee, whose whole thesis, his whole life's work was that the history of humanity can best be understood as a continuous process of the rise and fall of civilizations. And he said that in every moment of collapse of a civilization, there are really only 3 responses that people can have. One is to look longingly back to some perceived golden age in the past and to seek to restore it. All of these will sound familiar to us, okay? So to look backward to some perceived golden age and try and get it back. Some people check out. They retreat into their own concerns or into escapist, otherworldly, esoteric philosophies and practices. But there's another approach. There's also the creative minority, as Toynbee calls it, that sees the chaos and moves forward with a new vision, a new moral sensibility suited to new conditions, a new kind of social cohesion, such that the new civilization is already taking shape in the shell of the old one that's in the process of collapsing. Now, what does this have to do with our discussion today? What does this have to do with the unfinished business of Reconstruction? What does this have to do with the Baha'i faith in the United States? And why does my book focus on South Carolina? Well, we don't have time for an in-depth discussion of the era of Reconstruction and the profound issues and challenges that the country faced during this period and how they continue down to the present. If you're not familiar with Reconstruction, or if it was in school kind of a long time ago, then I highly recommend a recent documentary that was on PBS that is still free to watch online. It's called Reconstruction, America After the Civil War. It came out last year in 2019, produced by Henry Louis Gates, one of our great American historians. But so briefly, this is the dozen or so years after the Civil War, when for the first time, the United States attempted to become an interracial democracy. The bounds of the political and national community were revised to include both Black and white. There were attempts at reforming the economy, questions about whether the new industrializing economy was going to serve all of the people or a minority of the people. Who is entitled to share in the prosperity of the nation? Who is entitled to have a voice in the governance of the nation? One remarkable aspect of Reconstruction in politics was that African-American men were enfranchised and served in public office in large numbers, at least 2,000 local and state elected officials in the South, in the part of the country that had just been in rebellion in order to preserve slavery. At least 2,000 African-American men were elected to local and state offices and to the United States Congress. There were advances in education, in care for the poor, in economic development, in civil rights legislation and its application. The country by so many measures was a better place because of Reconstruction. And to make a very, very long story short, this moment of interracial democracy didn't last. From the 1880s down to the middle of the 20th century, as one author put it, the pursuit of equality fell before the pursuit of stability. White supremacy reasserted itself. And we had a new political system, a remarkably stable political system in the United States, in which the two main political parties and the powerful business interests with which they were both intertwined ran the show. And African Americans in the South and other non-white populations, Hispanics in the Southwest, Chinese and Japanese on the West Coast, Native Americans everywhere, and even the waves of immigrants from Southern and Eastern Europe who were coming at this time, who were not considered white enough. All of these populations were largely excluded and exploited. This new system after Reconstruction, this system of racial disenfranchisement and segregation and violence and exploitation that was adapted to the industrial age, the system we call Jim Crow for short, really takes shape in the South and in the United States in the 1890s. And it's not a coincidence at all that this is the same moment that, as the British writer Rudyard Kipling put it, the United States was taking up the white man's burden by acquiring an overseas empire in the Caribbean and the Pacific. Now, wouldn't you know, it also happens to be at this very moment, the mid-1890s, that the Baha'i faith first arrived in the United States. And the first Baha'i settlers began to attract little groups of American followers. Initially, the first American Baha'is were from the majority white Protestant population centers in the Midwest and the Northeast and some on the West Coast. But the population of Baha'is very soon started to reflect more and more the racial and ethnic and religious diversity of the country as a whole, even though the numbers of Baha'is were very, very small. So in other words, the Baha'i faith shows up in the United States to teach the oneness of humanity and actually starts to show some practical potential for putting that core principle into practice at precisely the moment in the country's history when everybody else is headed in exactly the opposite direction. It would have been easy for the Baha'is to accommodate Jim Crow, as virtually every other religious body in the country was doing, but they did not. This is for a variety of reasons, including the scriptures of the faith, which are rather explicit in this regard, the directives that came consistently from the international leadership of the faith, in particular Abdul Baha and Shoghi Effendi, and as well as the actions and the commitments of the American Baha'is themselves. I'll share my screen again just to show you the person who probably did the most to help ensure that the Baha'i faith in the United States grew up as an interracial community and defied this trend of segregation in American religious practice was this gentleman, whom many of you may know of already, a South Carolinian named Louis George Gregory. He was born just at the end of Reconstruction in Charleston. He grew up in dire circumstances, was able to achieve one of the best educations available to African Americans in his era. He became an attorney, a federal civil servant. He worked in Washington, D.C. at the Treasury Department. He became a Baha'i in 1909, and less than a year later, he made his first extended teaching trip to share the message of the faith in the Deep South, coming through Virginia and the Carolinas and Georgia, and then back to DC. Over the next 40 years, until his health prevented him from traveling, he was elected to a number of important administrative positions in the American Baha'i community. He became an itinerant teacher, visited 46 states, parts of Canada, came many times to his home state of South Carolina, spent a lot of time in North Carolina and Georgia, an extended period in Atlanta. Just since many of us are here from Atlanta, some of his finest and most memorable exploits were in Atlanta in the 1920s and 30s and 40s. There's a lot about these developments in both of my books, and I can't share much, but I just to summarize briefly, due to Mr. Gregory's efforts and others, especially those who would come from other parts and take up residence in the Deep South, fledgling groups of Baha'is started to grow up across the region in the midst of Jim Crow. And stop.
Where's your phone?
Excuse me, friends. Shut the door. Shut the door. My lovely ones are finished with children's classes. That's right. Fledgling groups of Baha'is all across the region that were like nothing that South Carolina or the other Deep South states had ever seen, even during Reconstruction. These were local communities that were crossing lines of race and class and gender in rather unprecedented ways to create a new kind of religious community. And as they built up their own community structures and culture, their own model of grassroots spiritual democracy on an interracial basis, they also consistently reached out to leaders of thought. They proclaimed their message through public lectures and the mass media. They made it a point to try and encourage and work with individuals and organizations that were at the forefront of the struggle for civil rights. With very small numbers, they were very energetically engaged, all during this era of Jim Crow, when it was pretty dangerous to do what they were doing. This is one photograph that I'll share. This is Louis Gregory in the background, in the back, with a group of new Baha'is and friends who were studying the faith in Columbia, South Carolina, in about 1944. And you notice that the ladies, they all know each other. Many of them live in the same neighborhood, and it's black and white together. And notice notice especially the smiles on their faces. In fact, I'll just say quickly, it's not unusual when you're studying the archival photographs from this era in the South to see pictures of black and white people together. That's not unheard of at all. In fact, it's quite common. But you should always look to see what expressions, especially the black folk, have on their faces. How are they holding their bodies? How relaxed are people? How closely are people standing to each other? Comparing this photograph with a lot of others that I've seen from around the South and around the country of black and white people together in this era, this is a remarkable photograph for the intimacy and the relaxed nature of the image. I think it speaks, I wouldn't suggest that these folk never offended each other or misunderstood each other, or that they're all saints. But I think the visual record is something that needs to be studied and understood. Here's another one from a little bit later, also in Greenville, South Carolina. This is in the 1950s. And if you can just note to the left of your screen, the two African Americans in the group, they're a married couple. And then there's the white lady who's kneeling between them and has her arms on the black man's shoulder, right? And then the black woman's hand is draped across the white lady's shoulder. The black man and the white man are not just close to each other, but they're like rubbing up against each other. Those are friends. Those are intimate friends. I think I point these out because these visual documents that we have are precious and really relevant to understanding what these early Baha'is across the South were up to, what they were committed to. Here's a group at Penn Center on St. Helena Island, South Carolina, very near Savannah, in 1962. This is a brochure for the Southeastern Summer School that took place at Penn Center. You notice that the way they have it designed, Savannah, Augusta, Columbia, Sumter, Charleston, all roads in the South lead to Penn Center, to Baha'i Summer School in 1960. And the other image here on this slide is the first local spiritual assembly, the first local Baha'i governing council of St. Helena Island. All of the African Americans are local people from St. Helena Island. And the one white lady had become a Baha'i a number of years before in North Augusta, South Carolina, just across the Savannah River from Augusta, and came to make the 9th person to be able to form the local spiritual assembly. And she was deadly ill with cancer at this time, and was able only to stay until a 9th Islander became a Baha'i, and then she returned to her home in North Augusta and passed away. And I was privileged last year to meet the only surviving member of this group, Ms. Johnson, who is standing in the back in white, second from the left. Wow. And let's see. Let me take it off of screen sharing now for a sec. All right. So moving forward quickly, by the late 1960s, when the civil rights movement had registered its biggest legislative victories and the conservative backlash across the country was gaining momentum, there was a sense among Baha'is across the South that African Americans in particular would be particularly ready to respond to the Baha'i message in large numbers. And the fruit of this conviction was seen in, well, really exactly 50 years ago, in the winter of 1970, 1971. There was the first regional teaching project coordinated by the Deep South Committee to take advantage of these new opportunities. And this campaign, exactly 50 years ago, permanently changed the character and the outlook of the American Baha'i community. And the reason my work focuses on South Carolina in large part has to do with the fact that the South Carolina portion of this campaign was far and away the most successful. I have a lot that I can share about it. I just want to, I'll share one passage. These young, mostly interracial teams of Baha'is would fan out in the morning to cities and towns and hamlets across South Carolina and across the region. And they would share the message with people in, quote, laundromats, restaurants, nightclubs, on the streets, in yards, in the rain, in the mud, in the snow, unquote. Lots of people became Baha'is on the spot after they heard a short and effective presentation on the faith. They would have mass meetings in the evenings for more in-depth presentations, including a whole lot of singing with new Baha'is and their family members. It was the most extraordinary burst of growth that the American Baha'i community had ever experienced. The Universal House of Justice, even before the campaign was over, sent a telegram to Baha'is around the world and said that the process of entry by troops that was forecast in the faith writings was rapidly accelerating in the United States, as evidenced by the enrollment of 8,000 new believers in South Carolina. Here's an image of a very early edition of the National Baha'i newspaper, the American Baha'i, that has a montage of photographs from the Southern campaign across the top. And I'm sorry that the lady towards the bottom is partly cut off, but she's signing her Baha'i enrollment card. And the headline says, South responds to divine summons. Over 8,000 souls respond to the healing message of Baha'u'llah in the Carolinas, hundreds more in Arkansas, Kentucky, Mississippi, Oklahoma, Tennessee. This was quite a dramatic development. By 1973, about a third of the 60,000 Baha'is in the United States lived in the single state of South Carolina. In 1970, before the campaign, there were 8 local spiritual assemblies in South Carolina. The next year, after the Winter Project, there were 108, the most of any state in the country. This was exciting and challenging. Leaders of the campaign said that South Carolina would become the first Baha'i state. But it also became clear very, very quickly that continuing this kind of growth or even maintaining the community's new size would be more difficult than anybody had initially imagined. And there's the first formal study of this phenomenon and its effects over the next several decades is in my new book, A History of the Baha'i Faith in South Carolina. A lot of new believers um, geographically in communities.
We're losing your
Someone else
connection.
having a problem here?
Your speed has been reduced to really super slow.
Between the many of the new highs and a lot of the rest of the American people, this presented unexpected changes, large and small. What ensued was a decades-long project.
Did we lose him?
I
Am
don't
I
see
back?
anymore. Oh, there you are. Are you still talking?
I am now. Sorry about that.
It's slowed down to a really slow
Don't
as you speak,
know how
even now.
to explain.
Yeah, your
it.
bandwidth.
Going away for a second.
Can you get closer to your modem?
But hear me now?
Yeah.
How does it?
It's still broken up and slow.
How is it now? Can everybody hear me okay now?
Yes.
Okay.
Right now.
Lovely, lovely, lovely. All right. Well, let's hope that don't happen again. But in the meantime, I'm gonna talk quick and show y'all a few more pictures, and we'll open up for some discussion. The experimentation. I think that was where I got cut off. This era of experimentation was energetic. The Louis G. Gregory Baha'i Institute, state and district teaching committees, local assemblies, the counselors and auxiliary board members, they experimented with a variety of approaches to teaching and deepening and human resource development. This is a teaching committee from Greenville, South Carolina in the early 1970s. This is an early group at the Louis Gregory Institute near Hemingway. This is kind of a fuzzy picture. Sorry, it's a mobile institute that has materials for children and youth and adults all inside that they used in Greenwood and Saluda and Newberry over towards on the Savannah River side of South Carolina. There was extensive use of the arts. This was one inexpensive way to distribute Baha'i songs and stories and topics for study. There was a community service radio station inaugurated in 1984. There was a great deal of opposition. This is even, after supposedly the civil rights movement had made its greatest strides. Not everybody in South Carolina had gotten the memo. That's the mailbox of the Louis Gregory Institute, beaten up by gunfire. The fruits of the experimentation in South Carolina and Georgia and Mississippi and other Deep South states during the 70s and 80s came into its own in the mid-90s. The rate of growth in the United States had declined for a variety of reasons, but by then the Universal House of Justice started to introduce the elements of a new framework for sustainable growth of the Baha'i community. That was a result of decades worth of trial and error in the Deep South and other parts of the world that had similar experiences of growth. And many of you are familiar with this fruit already. It's this new approach to grassroots capacity building called the Training Institute. And this is what, it's a system that enables local Baha'i communities to engage growing numbers of people from every walk of life in the work of the spiritual, intellectual, and material advancement of society, with a particular focus on children and youth. And in the Carolinas and Georgia, this process really leapt forward about 2006, 2007, with the introduction of the Junior Youth Spiritual Empowerment Program in the Southeast, and a series of youth training seminars. The first one was held in Atlanta, and then there were others in Hemingway and a number of other locations that brought a whole new generation of young people into the forefront of this work. And I think it's really important to point out that this image indicates it a little bit. This is actually from a conference in Atlanta with youth from the Carolinas and Georgia. Many of the young people that moved to the forefront in the mid-2000s were people whose parents and grandparents had become Baha'is in the 1970s and 1980s. They were, many of them, the readiest people anywhere to take the new system of the Training Institute and run with it. I had more prepared, but I think I want to stop briefly with this idea, to bring it back to the question of the unfinished business of Reconstruction in our country. There was an article that a Harvard political scientist named Danielle Allen wrote in 2017, right after the white supremacist violence in Charlottesville, Virginia, that I'm sure you remember. And I think this brings together kind of what's happening in our country and the particular challenges that the American Baha'i community has attempted to face and overcome. This piece includes these lines that I think are quite harrowing, quite humbling, but also ultimately, I think, quite empowering. So here's what she said. The simple fact of the matter is that the world has never built a multi-ethnic democracy in which no particular ethnic group is the majority, and where political equality, social equality, and economies that empower all have been achieved. All right, so that's the first part. Did everybody get that? So the world has never built a multi-ethnic democracy in which no particular ethnic group is the majority, and where political equality, social equality, and economic equality have been achieved. We are engaged in a fight over whether to work together to build such a world. And even those who are in principle willing to build that world are fighting with one another. There's another journalist, Ezra Klein from Vox, responded to this and said, perhaps the United States will be the first country to build such a society. But if anything, he continued, the gravity of the crises that we currently face and the example of so many other democracies around the world that have slid into autocracy and violence and repression should make us all, quote, take seriously the possibility that we could fail, unquote. So I point this out to share that there's this widespread consciousness that the future of the country is at stake. And because of how much of an effect, for good or for ill, the United States has had and continues to have far beyond its borders, to no small degree, it's the fate of the whole planet that we're talking about. So in this respect, I go back to Arnold Toynbee, and what do people do faced with the collapse of their civilization? Do they go backwards and try and recreate a fanciful golden age that probably never existed in the first place? Do they just check out because it's too much? Or do they roll up their sleeves and join hands together and work? There's this short passage, and I'll finish with that and then see if y'all have anything that you want to ask or say. This short passage from Shoei Effendi, the guardian of the Baha'i faith, to a British Baha'i in 1949. And I think the date is important because, right, this is Great Britain. The scars of World War II in 1949 were fresh and still bleeding. The Cold War by 1949 is taking a very ominous turn, and people realize, oh, the Cold War is not going away. And here's what Shoei Effendi said. We must expect these things. It is becoming evident that the world is not yet through with its labor. The new age not yet fully born. Real peace not yet right around the corner. We must have no illusions about how much depends on us and our success or failure. All humanity is disturbed and suffering and confused. We cannot expect to not be disturbed and not to suffer. But we don't have to be confused. So let's be about our business. I'd be happy to answer some questions or hear what your thoughts are. I did prepare more notes, and the only reason this talk took so little time is because I tried very hard to confine myself to what I wrote. Otherwise, I'd just be here for 2 or 3 days. So ask anything, say anything. For Hermione, how much time do we? I think Barbara mentioned we usually go till 12:30 or so. Is that reasonable?
That is reasonable, and it could possibly go beyond that, but
unless my children come back, in which case I got to go.
Yes, that was quite charming.
Thank you.
Well, we appreciate your presentation. There was so much information in there. The photographic history alone was truly enlightening, and is very much appreciated. Our humanity making its way inevitably and inexorably to the age in which we now live, 4.5 billion years later. Baha'u'llah referring to it as the age of ingathering, Muhammad, the promised day, the planetization of mankind, all of these things. And this age as Baha'u'llah tells us, the concourse on high wishes they be present for, enduring all manner of adversity in the name of their beloved. Thank you so much, Louis, for that. And everybody, please do check out in the chat, the video that he was referring to, the PBS video, Reconstruction, America After the Civil War by Henry Louis Gates. So at this time, if there are any questions or comments, please raise your hand electronically or where I can see it. Joan, are you trying to raise your hand? Unmute yourself, please.
Louis, I have your first book and it's very enjoyable. I had the pleasure of living in the same city as Dr. Joy Benson, who was one of the early white Baha'is to come to the South Carolina area. And it was a very difficult time for any white Baha'i living there to try and teach the faith and live the life. If it wasn't for the Abercrombie family, who helped them through very difficult times, they probably would have had to leave South Carolina. But I see South Carolina as sort of a part of a big jigsaw puzzle, in that we've put the pieces of black and white together very carefully in South Carolina. And we have to, as Baha'is, we have to nurture the most challenging issue to make it grow and to spread it out. South Carolina, I think, is the key to the South changing their ways and their thinking in race relations. And so I think the Black people of South Carolina, the Black Baha'is, are leading the effort in this jigsaw puzzle to work towards a larger unity. That's my thoughts for the day.
Well, I'm a little biased, but I can't say I disagree with anything you said. You know, and it's this sort of fascinating confluence of circumstances, right? That you know, in so many ways, South Carolina's Black population is remained the most African of all of the Black people in British North America. Black South Carolinians, even in the midst of the most horrific oppression, you know, had the sense that they were at home, right? This is our community. These are, even under enslavement, the nature of much of slavery in South Carolina was such that Black communities were able to remain continuous over the generations, right? When the Northern troops came in, at the end of the Civil War, Black Georgians and South Carolinians on the coast said, "This is our land. Our ancestors, our people are buried here. We have worked this land. We have paid for this land over generations. This land belongs to us," right? So there's this, Baha'is around the country, I think, you know, need to, we have to have as deep an appreciation as we can for these larger currents of American history, right? And who is who in our country. And so therefore, you know, how do we responsibly, thoughtfully, you know, prayerfully approach the circumstances in which we find ourselves, right? The local circumstances in which we find ourselves. Who are we speaking to? Whose ancestors are with us, you know, in any particular interaction in South Carolina and Georgia and North Carolina? You know, there's the weight of history, I think, is on every move we make, every word we speak. So I'll stop, because like I said, I would just keep on going. But no, thank you for that. And God bless Joy Benson. Yes, she and her husband moved to Greenville, South Carolina in the late 1950s, before he was even a Baha'i, and just didn't quite know what they were getting themselves into, and went headlong into a quiet revolution. And before long, the local police were after them. The FBI was after them. There was a resolution introduced in the South Carolina State House by one of their neighbors, who was a legislator, to condemn them as communists and NAACP activists and race mixers and God knows what else. As President Obama said, called them every name but what their mama named them. Thank God for them, and thank God for Joy, because she kept all of her pictures. She kept all of her notes. She kept every scrap of paper. You know, so many Baha'is were so busy making history that they forgot to write it down. Didn't have time to write it down. Joy wrote it all down. Praise the Lord. And if you or anybody else you know if you have somebody like that in your family or your local community who has, who has those kinds of memories, just please make sure you keep all their papers. Make sure that if when they pass away, as Joy recently did, that their children know what to do with all of their papers. Don't let it go in the trash. Give me a call.
Thank you both. Joan, you mentioned Joy Benson. Was she the sister of Jane Faley?
Yes.
Yeah.
And daughter of Catherine Junie Faley?
That's right.
Dynasty of women, those three. We have another comment from Priscilla.
Hi, I can't get my face reduced to a decent size. Please do it for me.
No.
No, it's fine.
I became a Baha'i in Omaha, Nebraska in 1970 because I had lived in New York City and I had seen the demonstration against starting the war in Vietnam, and I was very much against war. And I was very much for race unity, and the church I belonged to was not. And so I came to Omaha and I discovered the Baha'i faith. My husband and I did. And we were thrilled to be welcomed by the Baha'i community, which had three wonderful women, Doreen Brown, Adley Turner, and Marie Barnes. And we were a part of their local spiritual assembly, and we really loved each other deeply. And since then, I've had the wonderful chance to meet and love people of minorities in the Baha'i faith and outside too. And mainly, I think what is so wonderful, I grew up in a town where Blacks were not allowed to come. So I think there are a lot of white people that really love Black people, and I don't see their faces. I see everybody Black saying we got to get in better situation, and I'm trying to help, but I feel like I'm not doing very much.
Did you want to respond, Louis?
Sure.
But I'm looking forward to reading Lewis's book. That sounds wonderful.
Thank you. Thank you. Enjoy and let me know what you think. I think that, just to speak as one who, like you, was born on the white side of things, into the white racial caste with everything that involves. I've been thinking more and more lately about, the quality of my own sacrifice, right? The my work and like what animates, what's my purpose at this moment, right? And there's so much about reading about these folks, white and Black, in the past, who, not perfect people by any stretch of the imagination, but just put it all on the line, and gave things up in order to advance the oneness of humanity, to practice it. Give up the things that are not as important in favor of the things that are the most important, right? And it strikes me that when one of the reasons that I've been talking more and more with groups about like the big picture of human evolution on this planet, the evolution of life on this planet, and this question of the next stage of our development, is that I think when we talk like that, it encourages me, right? I remember what I'm about. I remember that every action I take is pregnant with possibility. So I better not mess it up too bad. I better, bring myself to account each day. But also, I can't screw it up too bad, right? On the other hand, because this process is inexorable, the only question is like, how easy can I make it for myself and others? How much can I help, right? And if that's the perspective, especially for us as white people, then if that's how we weigh ourselves, then whatever the next good thing is to do, whatever the next right thing is to do, we'll always be able to figure out what we can give, right? What the next thing is to do, to say, to give up, right? To let go of. If I think that if that overriding vision is always in our mind, then we work backwards from there, and we can always figure out what the next thing is to give in whatever circumstance. Sorry, that was kind of a rambling answer, but that's what you made me think of.
Well, and I know that when we express ourselves in the world, I always try very hard to. I know at one book I read said white people don't even look at the black people. They don't even recognize them. They treat them like they're invisible. I try to always treat them as I would treat my best friend, you know, with a greeting and a smile and maybe a comment or two. And certainly I haven't stopped teaching, and I keep up with my minority friends and encourage them, and we encourage each other. But I'm probably unaware of what all that people are doing to reach be white people reaching the black people in terms of universities, heads of state, heads of counties, and things like that. And I'm sure it's being done, but I feel like I'm outside of Atlanta, and because I'm in a county, there's no way I'm going to get to know the county members on a personal basis. So the best I can do is the people I do see, I can build a relationship.
Everybody can do something, you know. Not everybody's doing the same thing, but you know, one forward movement as a result of everybody's consistent actions.
And as I say to my friends, we are on the winning team. The rest of the world is falling apart.
Thank you, Priscilla, for those comments. We have Bill Collins wanting to make a comment or ask a question.
It's mostly asking a question. Louis, you referred in both of your books to the rapid growth of the Baha'i faith in South Carolina as the Carolinian Pentecost. And I was 20 years old and a Baha'i when it was taking place. And I observed two things happening. I observed excitement at growth, and I observed an underlying pushback from certain segments of the Baha'i community, primarily white, often male, that there was a concern that the people becoming Baha'is weren't really Baha'is. And I think that I have long thought, having observed it at the time, that this was a falsehood. But also, I wonder if you can see every time something like this occurs, where there is growth and movement, and the demographics of the Baha'i community change, how this reflects in today's environment of this constant feeling like there's two realities that are grinding against each other. The one that's accepting of the wholeness and oneness of the human race, and the other that's always looking to, what's the word I'm looking for? To the Universal House of Justice refers to this, that racism has become more subtle and intractable over time. How does the experience of the Baha'i community in South Carolina really bring us to show a microcosm of how we have to deal with the world we're in today? I'm sorry, that was a long question, but I had to set the stage. You understand what I'm saying, where I'm thinking?
So, okay. I mean, basically, Bill, you just like that's a whole other hour at least, right? To get started on that.
That's the next book you're writing.
Yeah, that's the third one that's slowly but surely on its way. Okay, so a number of thoughts. Abdul Baha and Shoghi Effendi over and over again called us in particular regarding race in the United States, called us to reflect, to be courageous, to learn, to be persistent. And they never indicated that in the foreseeable future, our hard work as American Baha'is would get to stop in that regard, right? Today, the Universal House of Justice makes it clear, both in specific terms for the United States and in broad terms for Baha'is around the world, that the nature of our work is to always be up to date about what the particular needs are of the moment in which we live, right? So we're not, I mean, we have to be conscious of history and so forth, but we're not, let us not fight the battle of 1912, right? You know, when Abdul Baha sat Mr. Gregory next to him, you know, in the presence of the Turkish ambassador and rearranged the place cards in Washington, D.C., at that time, that was breathtakingly revolutionary, right? Such a move at this moment in 2020, a century later, in some places in the United States might still, you know, be news, right? But in a lot of places in the United States, as you say, you know, the fact is the civil rights movement really did get some things done, right? There are things that are vastly different than they were 50 years ago, right? President Obama said this a few years ago at the 50th anniversary of the Selma to Montgomery March. His remarks, it's about 30 minutes long. You should find that on YouTube too if y'all haven't seen it. It's just fantastic. That's Obama, the historian at his finest, where he says, you know, he gets asked about the Ferguson report, right, and police reform. And he says he hears people say, look, nothing is different. This is all the same. And he says, I understand what they're saying, but if you think that nothing is different now than it was 50 years ago, then it's just because you've forgotten what Los Angeles and Chicago and Selma, Alabama were like in 1950, in 1960, right? So yes, too much is the same, but no, we can't say that the needs of this time, the challenges of this time are exactly this. It's different, right? So we have to be alive. We have to be thoughtful. We have to be always paying attention, always being on purpose, like consciously trying to get out of our whatever's comfortable, right? Because whatever's comfortable for us, especially us white folk in regards to race, whatever's comfortable for us is yesterday. Does that make sense? Right? If I'm comfortable at this moment, I'm comfortable with what happened before, right? The question is, am I ready for what comes next, right? Am I constantly calling myself to account and paying attention and revising my own approach and learning? So I think that's true for the individual. I think that's true for the whole. And I think that's true according to the writings of our faith for the American Baha'i community as a whole, right? And yes, I agree that South Carolina is like a microcosm. It's a kind of a bellwether, right? That you can look at you can just isolate what's happening in South Carolina, focus on that, and you can see what the currents are, what the conditions are, what the questions are for the whole American Baha'i community. It's this kind of prism that you can use to see everything. And it's because race, white supremacy is so much what the United States is, right? And you can see it all so clearly inside and outside the Baha'i community. How are we dealing with this when you focus on this state? And because of the way African Americans in particular have responded to the faith in South Carolina, you've got a lot of material to work with to be able to think through these things and learn, right? So I do think, and to go back to what, gosh, was it Joanne said, that somehow this is for all American Baha'is, this is essential reading and learning and discussion about our own national community's history of dealing with white supremacy and just figuring out how to be. And it's so true that, from when I was a young Baha'i in the 90s, I would go to conferences here and there around the country, and it seemed, at that time at least, it seemed like everybody and their grandma had something to say about South Carolina and what happened in the 70s, right? Even whether you were there or not, whether you had ever left, Eugene, Oregon or not, like everybody had something to say to me about it when I said I was from South Carolina. And a lot of it was great, and a lot of it was bonkers. Like, what? I have met a lot of the people that you are talking about, and they are not who you think they are. Why don't you come, be quiet now and come visit before you draw conclusions, right? One of my friends, one of the great teachers from the 70s, Dr. Annette Young, who's still living, she says this thing about quote unquote paper Baha'is, right? Folks who signed their declaration card just because, a white person was asking them to sign up for something. And so they did it. Yes, sir, whatever. And then, but didn't really believe in it. This is one of the things that I have heard in the American Baha'i community about what happened in the Deep South. And Annette Young says, let me tell you about paper Baha'is. Let me tell you about this man. And I should remember the locality, and I don't. Mr. So-and-so, who, was the only Baha'i in his family. But he made sure that when he passed, that he left with his children the instructions that he was to be interred with all of his American Baha'is, that his children were to put all of his American Baha'i newspapers into the coffin with him to go into the ground, right? A rural, minimally educated African-American man in South Carolina. She said, that is a paper Baha'i, the American Baha'i newspaper, right? It was his lifeline and it was his identity, and he knew what he had done, right? Now, maybe he didn't show up for convention every year, right? Maybe there was or was not a local spiritual assembly in his town the whole time, right? But that man and thousands of others, and I don't know how many thousands of children that at one time or another went through Baha'i children's classes in South Carolina over the course of decades. Now, maybe some of those children still consider themselves Baha'is. Maybe they don't. Maybe, in my experience, when a lot of those kids meet Baha'is, they say, oh yeah, I remember so-and-so. I remember that it has shaped the consciousness of groups of people. A lot of places in the United States, we are still used to thinking of the Baha'i faith as a one by one, little drip, drip, drip kind of experience, right? The teaching is primarily like me and one other individual, right? And maybe after however many years they decide to become Baha'is, right? But in large scale growth, you're playing in the big leagues, right? This is about how does the cause of Baha'u'llah start to permeate a culture, change groups of people, change families, change institutions, and where we can start to
Friends,
see that.
I'm sorry. Friends, I'm
Right. I'm sorry too. I'm sorry too. Yeah, just
it's
stop me.
12:50. The assembly meets at 1 o'clock. We are so appreciative of this history and all of this insight and knowledge that you have. We appreciate the questions and comments. We wish it could go on forever. But we do have a stopping point, which we've already passed. And we just wanted to take this time to welcome any guests that are present and to share how you happen to be with us today. And if you can, very quickly, let us know that. And it doesn't matter how many times you've been here before. If you're still a guest, please let us know. And after that, we'll make a couple of announcements and close with the closing prayer. Thank you so much, Louis Venters.
Yes, Hermia, before the announcements and the guests introduce themselves, I just want to say personally, thank you, Louis. It was so refreshing. You know, I became a Baha'i in the 70s in Florence, South Carolina. And just hearing all the history, it just really, I forgot about the time. I was just engulfed in what the conversation. So I just want to again say thank you. Thank you. So,
okay. When the Rona's over, invite me to come in person too, anywhere around Atlanta, anywhere. I don't eat very much. Just give me some gas money. I'll be there. Whatever the group is, whatever the, whatever kind of, agency or institution, or I'll talk to anybody about this stuff and we'll make it happen.
Awesome. Okay.
Thank you so much. Do we have any guest announcements? If not, we'll move on. Just so you know, next week's speaker will be Counselor Nwandi Lawson. So be sure to stop in for another outstanding presentation. Watch for details about that sometime later this week. We're also blessed to have with us Mrs. Aliyah Agbu. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, joining us on December 20th. So stay tuned. And remember the food distribution program every Thursday from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. at the Baha'i Unity Center in the parking lot. Please spread the word to help combat food insecurity within the community. And for members of the Baha'i Faith, you're warmly encouraged to make a financial contribution to the South DeKalb Baha'i Fund and or the National Baha'i Fund through the online contribution system, OCS. After you log in at ocs.baha'i.us, just select the My Locality tab, then click Enter Community Contribution. Select this locality or any other recipient under the list of recipient options, then follow the prompts. Many thanks to all those who worked together to make today's program possible. Thanks to all of you for sharing your day with us, our readers, and everyone else. Until next time, stay safe and well. We will end now with a closing prayer. Would anyone like to read it? Elizabeth, unmute.
Let's see if I have to make this smaller here first. Magnified, O Lord my God, be thy name, whereby the trees of the garden of the revelation have been clad with verdure and been made to yield the fruits of holiness during this springtime, when the sweet savors of thy favors and blessings have been wafted over all things.
And caused.
Okay. I'm sorry. I need to, let me move this. Oh, there we go. During the springtime, when the sweet savors of thy favors have and blessings have been wafted over all things, and caused them to bring forth whatsoever had been preordained for them in the kingdom of thine irrevocable decreeing the heaven of thine immutable purpose. I beseech thee by this very name not to suffer me to be far from the court of thy holiness, nor debarred from the exalted sanctuary of thy unity and oneness. Ignite then, O my God, within my breast the fire of thy love, that its flames may burn up all else except my remembrance of thee, that every trace of corrupt desire may be entirely mortified within me, and that naught may remain except the glorification of thy transcendent and the all glorious being. This is my highest aspiration, thine ardent desire, O thou who rulest all things, and in whose hand is the kingdom of the entire creation. Thou verily dost what thou chooseth. No God is there beside thee, the Almighty, the All-Glorious, the Ever-Forgiving, Baha'u'llah.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Thank you, everyone. We appreciate you. Hopefully we'll see you again next week. Thank you. You have a wonderful week.
Power.
Thank you.
Bye.